Everything begins with belief. If your life lacks belief, it hasn't even begun. Running a business, managing a family, and managing health are all about cultivating belief. Running a business is about elevating belief to conviction and conviction to faith. So, have you truly understood? Or rather, do you truly believe? I categorize beliefs into several levels or grades. The first type of belief is complete disbelief. They don't believe anyone. Why would they listen to your sharing, attend your class, or buy your book? They're just casually browsing. After watching, they'll tell you, this teacher is bragging. That's the first type. The second type is selective belief. If your viewpoint aligns with theirs, if it resonates with them, they'll fully trust you. But if a particular statement contradicts their viewpoint, they'll distrust you. There are always people like this. If you listen to the teacher's audio and frequently comment or read others' comments, you'll notice things like, this recording is excellent, but there's one point I disagree with, another flaw. Have you ever considered this? If two people share the same viewpoint, you don't need to learn from me because it proves you also have it. The very point where my viewpoint differs from yours is what determines our differences. Why can successful teachers start from scratch? Why can successful teachers achieve financial freedom? Why are successful teachers able to create their own achievements today, while many of us haven't achieved financial freedom or even accomplished anything? It's precisely this difference that makes us different. Therefore, selective belief is essentially the same as disbelief. The third level is when someone truly believes in words or thoughts. They genuinely believe the teacher, that everything the teacher says is correct, absolutely correct, and they applaud and cheer. That's the third level of belief. In my opinion, these three types of belief will not lead to success. What is the fourth type of belief? Do you know? It's when the teacher tells me a point today, and I have absolutely no doubt about it. I accept it 100% and immediately put it into practice. Today, I want to give you a sentence. Belief is a verb, not a noun. And there is no middle ground between belief and disbelief. Belief is belief, and disbelief is disbelief. When Jesus could walk on water, one of his disciples said, I can also walk on water. And he actually started walking. But as he walked, suddenly one disciple said, how is that possible? Only the teacher can do it. How can you do it? He had initially believed, but at that moment, he doubted and fell into the water. This is a little story from the Bible. In other words, there is no middle ground between belief and disbelief. There was a very powerful feng shui master who had indeed helped many people. For example, if someone got into trouble, he would set up a feng shui arrangement and it would be fine. If a company had some problems, he would set up a feng shui arrangement and it would be fine. But every time you asked him, he would first have a 5 to 10 minute consultation. Then he would only ask one question, look into the person's eyes. Do you believe me? If he saw even a hint of doubt in the person's eyes, he would say, take your money, you can leave now. Sometimes he would even use more exaggerated language, take your money now and get out. There was also a very powerful traditional Chinese medicine doctor who had truly saved many patients that major hospitals wouldn't take. He was incredibly skilled, but he was also a very strange old man. He was the same way. Regardless of whether you brought money or not, the first question he would ask you was, do you believe I can help you? If he saw even a hint of doubt in your eyes, he would say, get out. At first, I couldn't understand it at all. But later, both of them said the same thing to me in unison. That thing enlightened me. If you believe in me, I can help you. If you don't believe in me, it's useless even if I do it. I've set up a feng shui arrangement for you today. But if you don't believe me, my plan won't work. I'll treat you today, using my acupuncture or my medicine. But if you don't believe it while taking the medicine, how can it help you? It's useless. Even water knows the answer. Surely the medicine knows the answer? Another time, at the end of a course, someone talked to me about something, saying, teacher, do you know that I read Rich Dad Poor Dad before you? But I just treated it as a book. You're different. Although you read it later than me and your starting point was lower, you treated this book as your faith. When he said that sentence, it felt like a jolt of electricity to me. You know, I thought, yes, why do so many people who have read Rich Dad Poor Dad succeed, but not many? It's because I treated that book as my faith. I believed every word, every sentence, in that book 100%. I believed my teacher 100%. I believed in my teacher like a god. The leaf generates power. Even for a while, there were many negative news reports about Kiyosaki online, saying that Kiyosaki went bankrupt, the rich dad myth was shattered, and people shouldn't believe anymore that financial freedom was impossible. But I still believed 100%. I personally flew to the United States to verify my teacher's story. He is my idol, my hero. It might sound silly to say this, but there's a saying in Alibaba that perfectly describes it. What kind of people and what kind of spirit do Alibaba people have? Jack Ma once said, Alibaba people are very silly and naive. The smart people all left, but the silly people stayed at Alibaba. Very silly and naive might sound like a derogatory term, but listen to the next part. The next part of the Alibaba saying is very fierce and persistent. It's because of this naivety that they are so fierce and persistent. I am that kind of naive person, someone who truly maintains that self-confidence. I told you about Rich Dad Poor Dad, but you might not have a deep understanding. Let me tell you a true story from my own experience. Have you heard of the book The Greatest Salesman in the World, about the scrolls on the parchment? You might have heard of The Greatest Salesman in the World, which comes from this book. It's a global bestseller and a book that greatly changed my life. At that time, I was working in sales and looking for sales books, and that's when I read this book. The Greatest Salesman in the World. I must become the greatest salesman in the world. But when I opened the book, I found it wasn't about sales. It was a fairy tale. A poor young man went to the home of a very rich landlord. The young man desperately wanted to get rich and became the landlord's lackey. Then the landlord, on his deathbed, saw how eager the young man was to learn and told him, I'm leaving you an inheritance. This inheritance is amazing. I've made so much money and become a billionaire because of this. The book I'm leaving you is called The Scroll. You must read it according to my instructions every day, and you can become a billionaire like me. Read it once in the morning, once at noon, and once in the evening. You can only read one chapter each day. Read one chapter continuously for a month. After a month, you can turn to the next chapter. You can't read them all at once, you can't skip around. You can only read one chapter at a time. Read it aloud in the morning, and read it every day at noon and in the evening. Then read one chapter a month. After this childish fairy tale was told, do you know what many people would do? They would scoff at it. Some people don't even bother reading the rest. The second type reads it, then flips through the last few pages instantly, wondering what it says and what the scrolls are all about. Do you know what kind of person I am? I'm incredibly naive. It's like I found a martial arts manual. I read it chapter by chapter, morning, noon, and night, for a whole month before moving on to the next chapter. I even felt like I was the protagonist in that story. I was just like the characters in the story. I read it every day, every single day. After a year, I finished all the chapters and thought I'd become a billionaire. You know that feeling? It's about foolishly believing, foolishly doing, foolishly making millions. I was shrewdly calculating and shrewdly working, but in the end, I shrewdly lost everything. I'm a very naive person. I'd rather believe it's real. I would rather believe it's real. And then I just foolishly read it. I completely absorbed that book into myself. It's not about sales anymore, it's about opening up my entire mind and soul. My teacher told me to do sales, and at that time I was very resistant to sales. But I went into sales. My teacher told me that to learn financial intelligence, I had to learn finance, law, and marketing. I wondered where I could learn these things, so I went to university to study business administration, marketing, and finance. Everything in this world is designed. Our clothes are designed, our phones are designed, our cars are designed. But nothing is more important than designing your own life. I started studying my teacher's life trajectory. I learned from him about choosing a partner, taking courses, starting a business, and doing everything else. In the end, I sketched out a life similar to his. Many of us can't truly believe. Why do some people achieve success while others don't, even when learning from a teacher? It's because the degree of belief differs. Many people selectively believe, and selective belief isn't true belief. I often say, when you don't understand anything, you just listen and do as you're told. When you understand, you can do whatever you want. It's really like that. It's the same as when we apprenticed in ancient times. Before you graduated, you had to listen to your teacher. After you graduated, you developed your own independent thinking system, and you could do whatever you wanted. This includes my understanding of the law of attraction. This is another example. I believed 100% of everything he said. Why wouldn't I believe him? I didn't lose anything by believing him. And I truly used the law of attraction to attract my first house and my first car. Many of us, however, are still doubting, still hesitant, still disbelieving. And you know what? I never think there's anything wrong with the teacher. If the law of attraction doesn't work for me, I think it's my problem, that my mind wasn't focused enough, and I'll try again. Many people use it once or twice and find that the law is inaccurate, that it's a scam. That's how it is. I always look for the cause within myself. I never look for the teacher's fault. The teacher is always right in my eyes. I treat the teacher as a saint, as a god, and as my faith. Many people simply can't do that. I hope today's lesson on belief can bring you a different feeling. Listen to all my courses, listen to them all, and don't just listen. After listening, you must put them into practice, achieving unity of knowledge and action. Belief is a verb, not a noun. It requires action. It's not about making you believe me. For example, if you admire Steve Jobs, you can treat every word he says as gospel and replicate his life. That's it. But the most important thing is to believe in someone with the right understanding, right mindfulness, and results. Listen to those who have the most results. Listen to the kind of person you want to become. Find your idol, your spiritual idol, and your faith, and start believing in them. Treat every word they say as golden rules. Many people succeed this way. Believe in me. I hope today's sharing has been helpful. Stop calculating, put down your ego, and like me, maintain a pure heart. Thank you all. I hope each of you can live out your highest version of yourself, your most magnificent version in the universe, and become the person you aspire to be. Each of you can succeed. Each of you can achieve financial freedom. Each of you can achieve accomplishment.